I'm always fascinated about directors' first films. I mean, most directors have a rocky start, let's just say that. Like James Cameron had Piranha 2, Francis Ford Coppola had Dementia 13, and Kubrick had Fear and Desire. But sometimes there's those directors who, maybe with a whiff of luck, whip out something tremendous in their first try. And that's what we're going to be discussing in this video. From Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs to what is considered the best film of all time, join me as we uncover times directors' first films were absolute masterpieces. Jordan Peele's directorial debut surprised everyone. I mean, just look at the amount of awards the movie got. Jordan Peele spent years in comedy, so the success of this movie was unexpected for many. It wasn't just the originality of its presentation, but also how seamlessly Peele transitioned from comedy
straight up Chili's. She's like,
what he would later describe as a social thriller. Peele, however, saw a connection between comedy and horror. Both genres, he noted, rely on pacing and hinge on reveals. He even credited his years in comedy as a form of training for the creation of Get Out. Although Peele has been sitting on the idea for years, it wasn't until 2013 that his comedy partner, Keegan-Michael Key, introduced him to producer Sean McKittrick. Peele pitched the entire story. McKittrick loved the idea and agreed to fund the writing of the script on the spot. In less than 2 months, Peele delivered. Funding for the actual movie came from Blumhouse Productions, which provided the $4.5 million budget. The production itself faced typical challenges, budget constraints, and having to relocate the shoots from California to Alabama. But the film actually wrapped in just 23 days. Multiple endings were considered, but after the 2016 election and numerous police shootings of unarmed black men, Peele settled on the ending we see in the theatrical release, believing it held the strongest emotional and narrative weight. In 2017, Get Out premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, and it was theatrically released in February of that same year. It became a massive commercial success, grossing $255 million worldwide. But the real challenge came during award season. The studio had to rebrand the film to appeal to the Academy's older and predominantly white voters, many of whom were hesitant to embrace horror. Ultimately, the gamble paid off.
Jordan Peele, Get Out!
Get Out earned 4 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay.
I love you all. Thank you so much. Good night.
Reservoir Dogs is Tarantino's first official film. In 1985, Tarantino worked at a video rental store called Video Archives in Manhattan Beach, which housed an impressive selection of movies that attracted the young director. And that's where he would meet future collaborator Roger Avary, who actually helped pen Pulp Fiction. Tarantino enjoyed his time there, saying it was the best job until he became a director. Tarantino was certain he would become an actor, and even took acting classes while working at Video Archives. It was during all of this that his interest in filmmaking grew bigger and bigger, to a point where he just couldn't handle it anymore. So he enlisted a bunch of friends and decided to make his first short movie. My Best Friend's Birthday was a movie about 2 friends who work at the radio station KBLY. Tarantino would then hone his writing skills when he penned the screenplays for 1993's True Romance and 1994's Natural Born Killers.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Eventually, True Romance actually sold for $50,000, the Writers Guild minimum for the time. So with that money, Tarantino went on to do the thing he was always destined to do.
I'm going after him, okay?
So he started fleshing the idea of a heist movie gone wrong, which became the incredible Reservoir Dogs. He showed the script to a few friends, including producer Lawrence Bender, who after reading it decided the movie needed a proper budget. Tarantino gave Bender a 2-month deadline before he would do the movie anyway. The two of them approached small budget studios until Live Entertainment showed interest in making the film with Tarantino at the helm. They ended up giving him a $1.2 million budget and a list of actors he could work with, one of them being Harvey Keitel. Keitel's influence and connections helped with casting of the rest of the film. He was able to fly Bender and Tarantino to New York, and he put the word out to his colleagues about the movie. With cast and crew collected, production on Reservoir Dogs began, and hardships came flooding. For instance, the mythical stuck in the middle with you scene was particularly hard to get done, as the prosthetic ear used in the scene kept melting over and over again due to how hot it was on set. Tarantino even got into a fist fight with Lawrence Tierney.
Why?
Unfortunately, it was really difficult to deal with.
There's 2 ways you can go on this job. My way or the highway.
Like Harvey Keitel, quit. I've made a lot of movies and I've never dealt with a crazy motherfucker like Lawrence. I go, fuck you, you fat fuck, you're fucking fired. The crew breaks out into applause.
But the problems weren't done yet. Even the movie's first screening at the 1992 Sundance Film Festival was wrought with accidents. From the missing scope lens required for the projector, which actually led the movie looking terrible, to a power outage during the Mexican standoff scene.
It hurts.
But those setbacks could not take away from the talent Tarantino showed in his first feature film. Reservoir Dogs would become the festival's most talked film. After being shown at several other film festivals, including Cannes, Sitges, and Toronto, Reservoir Dogs opened in the United States and totaled nearly $3 million at the domestic box office, and it is touted as a classic of independent film and a cult film. After graduating in 1990, Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson decided to write and shoot a black and white short film titled Bottle Rocket. However, their inexperience in filmmaking soon became apparent when they ran out of money after shooting just 8 minutes of footage. Luckily, those 8 minutes proved to be enough to secure additional funding to complete the 13-minute short.
Thank you very much.
Which would later be screened at the 1994 Sundance Film Festival. A family friend of the Wilson brothers managed to get both the short film and the feature-length script to producer Polly Platt, who arranged for James L. Brooks to meet with Anderson and the Wilson brothers.
Virtually everybody in the movie was living in one apartment. So I said, let's read it out loud. And they said, okay. And we went to, I think, a hotel suite.
Was so impressed by the script that he chose Bottle Rocket as a low-budget film to finance under his deal with Columbia Pictures.
Said, yeah, we're committed to making the film, but the script needs work, and we're going to need to develop the script some.
And it took 2 years. 2 years.
Released in 1996, the now cult classic story of best friends Anthony, Dignan, and Bob staging a wildly complex, mildly successful robbery.
Then we started the process of previewing it.
You know, they finished their popcorn, they finished their soda, and they just got up and left.
And it was really depressing.
I knew it was a great film, and I just felt we had the wrong audiences.
We're saying things like, why didn't we see her breasts?
It was a disastrous debut, even by Wes Anderson's own claim. He recalled how he was high on his youthful confidence. Quote, "We had 86 people in the audience, I think, and by halfway through, about 20 were left, and I watched them leave. You watch somebody get up and say, maybe this one's just going to the bathroom, but they're taking all their bags with them."
It's in the lore that we had the worst scores ever.
Wes kept working on the film, and Sundance was his only shot. Without it, everything they'd worked for would collapse.
And Sundance turned it down.
Wes was very, devastated and pissed off.
I mean, it made me crazy.
Like a complete failure.
Even worse, the movie was a commercial failure, earning a gross revenue of $560,000. Despite the setbacks, the movie is full of the seed that would become Wes Anderson's signature style. The meticulous attention to detail, the symmetrical shots, and most importantly, his peculiar characters.
Time!
The raw potential Wes Anderson showed in his movie is simply undeniable. Even Martin Scorsese is a fan of the film, calling it one of his favorite movies of the 90s, and praised Wes Anderson for his ability to, quote, convey the simple joys and interactions between people so well and with such richness. Sometimes being a first-time movie director working with a tight budget means doing most of the work on your own, even if it takes up to 5 years to finish your movie. The renowned David Lynch previously studied for a career as a painter, and had created several short films to animate his paintings. By 1970, however, he had shifted his focus to filmmaking, and at the age of 24, he accepted a scholarship at the American Film Institute Center for Advanced Film Studies. Yet he disliked the course and had considered dropping out, until he was offered the chance to produce his own script. Lynch initially had a script titled Gardenback, a surrealist story about adultery based on the painting of a hunched figure with vegetation growing from its back. This one, basically. The script would have resulted in a roughly 45-minute-long film, but the AFI felt it was too long for such a figurative, non-linear narrative. In its place, Lynch presented Eraserhead, which he developed based on a daydream of a man's head being taken to a pencil factory by a small boy. Several board members at the AFI opposed producing such a surrealist work, but they relented when Dean Frank Daniel threatened to resign if it were vetoed.
This I got from a veterinarian that had just died. He let me, work with it.
So Lynch shot the film for over 4 years with a crew of 6 or 7 people from 1971 to 1976. The bulk of the time was spent in principal photography because of funding difficulties. By 1974, Lynch repeatedly ran out of money and equipment, and production often started and stopped. He actually split from his ex-wife, Peggy Lentz, and began living illegally on the set, specifically in Henry's room in the movie. To make ends meet, Lynch relied on loans from friends, including his old high school classmate Jack Fisk and Fisk's wife, Sissy Spacek, who even cooked meals for the crew and helped on set. While directing, Lynch also took a paper route, delivering the Wall Street Journal for $48.50 a week. This job severely interrupted production, as he had to deliver the papers after midnight, which was also the only time they could shoot the film, since during the day, the set couldn't be insulated from the neighborhood traffic and delivery sounds. Lynch would return to the set before dawn, and do some of his best work then, which accounts for the film's eerie and dead-of-night stillness. Not only did Lynch wrote and directed the movie, but he also edited and created the score and sound design. To compensate the small crew for not being able to pay them, Lynch promised everyone a share of any profits. Profits everyone assumed would never come. When Eraserhead premiered at the FilmX Festival in LA on March 19, 1977, only 25 people attended the film in its opening night. The following evening saw 24 attendees. However, Ben Barenholtz persuaded Cinema Village in New York to run the film as a midnight feature. This midnight movie run would continue for several years, ultimately turning the film's modest sub-$100,000 budget into a $7 million profit. Though critical reception was initially mixed, Eraserhead became a cult classic, recognized for its distinctive visual style, haunting sound design, and surreal dream sequences. It set the stage for the rest of Lynch's career, and in 2007 even declared, quote, "Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film." While it is undoubtedly beneficial to be born into Hollywood royalty,
Who's your father?
I'll give you a hint.
the expectation is to fill big shoes and the struggles to step out of others' shadows. But with an extremely successful 1999 debut, The Virgin Suicides, Sofia Coppola did just that. She spent most of her life in the realm of Hollywood. She acted since she was an infant, appearing in the background of 8 of her father's films. However, her acting career largely ended after her performance in The Godfather 3.
My daughter, Mary Corleone.
For which she was named Worst Supporting Actress and Worst New Star at the 1990 Golden Raspberry Awards. But 3 years later, Sofia Coppola directed several music videos, which marked the emergence of key themes and visual motifs that would later define her signature style. In 1995, however, at the recommendation of Sonic Youth's Thurston Moore, Coppola got the chance to read the source material of The Virgin Suicides, written by Jeffrey Eugenides.
When I read the book, I had a really clear idea of how I thought it should look as a film. Growing up, there weren't a lot of movies that I felt represented teenage girls in a way that I could relate to.
It was also the first book that made her realize she wanted to be a director, and she had a clear vision for how the story should be adapted. Coppola went ahead and wrote her own version of the script in 1998. After the rights to the novel lapsed, Coppola pitched her manuscript to Muse executives Roberta and Chris Hanley, the latter of whom signed on to co-produce. The resources at Coppola's disposal were evident. Her brother Roman served as the second unit director, and their father, Francis Ford Coppola, became a co-producer and a source of sage advice on set. The production process went relatively smoothly, with the biggest challenge reportedly being a shortage of film stock, often hitting the daily maximum by lunchtime.
Virgin Suicides.
While her family name and American Zoetrope's backing may have helped secure a coveted slot at Cannes and Sundance, the film's warm critical reviews made it clear that its strengths were entirely the product of Coppola's vision. The Virgin Suicides earned praise for the performances of its cast, Coppola's direction, visual style, and the original score by the French electronic band Air. The film was lauded for its lyrical representation of adolescent angst, and quickly became a cult classic. This work also set Sofia Coppola apart from her father. The Virgin Suicides presents an outsider's perspective into the sad, aloof lives of 5 sisters. Coppola's direction imbues the film with a dreamlike atmosphere, almost as though the events are detached from time. Many technical and thematic ideas explored in The Virgin Suicides would continue to be present in Coppola's subsequent films, such as Lost in Translation. Despite honing her craft for over a decade in lauded collaborations, Greta Gerwig didn't have the experience to direct her own feature film until Lady Bird.
Collapse like a little closer.
She had co-directed Nights and Weekends with Joe Swanberg in 2008, but for her solo debut, Gerwig needed one thing: a good script. In 2013, she had just that. Gerwig had been preparing for this moment for a long time. Her love of filmmaking began in college. She also noted that working on film sets as an actor for over 10 years and asking directors and cinematographers endless questions about their craft helped immensely. It wasn't until 2015 that Gerwig met with her agents and put together a list of producers and financiers to pitch the film to. Although initially reluctant, Gerwig knew that Scott Rudin, who had been involved with Frances Ha and Mistress America, was the most obvious choice. With Within 12 hours of reading the script, Rudin gave his approval and said that he would produce it.
Everybody to do everything!
Lady Bird. But the film wouldn't be as amazing as it is without its leading lady, Saoirse Ronan. Gerwig met Ronan at the 2015 Toronto International Film Festival while promoting Maggie's Plan. The two women met in a hotel room where Ronan read all of Lady Bird's lines.
You definitely couldn't get in.
It was at that moment that Gerwig knew Ronan was Lady Bird, leading her to push production 6 months back so that Ronan could complete The Crucible on Broadway. Gerwig even assembled the remaining cast around Ronan. 2 weeks before production began in the summer of 2016, the director invited everyone to Los Angeles for rehearsals, going through scenes at her apartment and even having dance parties. This sense of play and connection during preparation would carry over into the film's production, and Gerwig's efforts paid off.
And kiss her!
Not only did she create a film that serves as a female counterpart to tales like The 400 Blows and Boyhood, but Lady Bird ended up winning a lot of awards, and it got 5 of the most important Oscar nominations.
I did not think this would happen!
The movie grossed over $79 million worldwide, making it A24's highest grossing film of all time. While every movie I've discussed in this video is a masterpiece in its own right, it's tough to match the influence of Citizen Kane.
Control of the government of this state.
Even if it's technically not the first Orson Welles movie ever made. Wells was a seasoned talent in the industry, having experience in both radio and theater. His foray into filmmaking was actually an 8-minute short titled Hearts of Age. In 1938, he made a 40-minute silent movie, Too Much Johnson. However, Wells never finished editing the large amount of footage. 1938 was an eventful year for Wells, as it was also the year he directed and narrated the controversial radio broadcast, The War of the Worlds. The following year, Hollywood recognized his potential, and he signed the contract with RKO Pictures. Although it was unusual for an untried director, Wells was given freedom to develop his own story, use his own cast and crew, and retain Final Cut privileges. After 2 abortive attempts to get a project off the ground, he wrote the screenplay for Citizen Kane, collaborated with Herman J. Mankiw, I'm not gonna try to say his name. Though Citizen Kane was not a commercial success upon its release and faded from view afterwards, it returned to public attention when it was praised by French critics like André Bazin and re-released in 1956. In 1958, the film was voted number 9 on the prestigious Brussels 12 list at the 1958 World Expo. From that point on, Citizen Kane recognition snowballed. For 40 years, it stood at number 1 in the British Film Institute's Sight and Sound decennial poll of critics, and it topped the American Film Institute 100 Years, 100 Movies list in 1998, as well as its 2007 update. It is often cited as one of the best films ever made. Citizen Kane broke new ground with its experimental, non-linear narrative and innovative score. Its cinematography was revolutionary, including techniques like deep focus that would go on to become staples of filmmaking. Every frame of Citizen Kane has been meticulously analyzed and debated over the years, and the discussion is well deserved. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.